Okay, let's hear from Philip in North Carolina. Philip, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Passio. Thank you for taking my call. How are you?
Sure, I'm doing well tonight.
I am giving you a call for the first time. This is my first time calling in. I am relatively new to your work. I believe the beginning of March was about the first time I had clicked on a What on Earth is Happening YouTube video, and I even attended the seminar in Asheville a couple of weeks ago.
Great.
I've been kind of shy and to your information because I have yet to hear up until about a day ago when I listened to an interview that you did on September the 12th, 2012 on Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye. In regards to September the 11th and directed energy weapons.
Right.
You made a couple of references in that video that I really haven't heard in the material that I've had the time to be able to absorb. So my question is, have you had an opportunity to read Dr. Judy Wood's book, Where Did the Towers Go? And did you maybe explain, and there was even a part in that interview where you mentioned that part of the ritual came from a higher place. Wanted to know if you could maybe elaborate your point of view on that.
Yeah, I talked about, the ritualistic aspects of 9/11. I also talked about the impossibility of it being a mechanical collapse due to, fires and bending or melting steel, etc. As the official story goes, the pancake collapse theory. I talked about that pretty extensively and ran through the physics equations that are required to understand to even prove just in essential Newtonian dynamics, which any junior year, sophomore year, high school level physics class can, offer. Just knowledge that is prerequisite in any kind of a physics 101 high school level class can show people that the official story is actually impossible according to the laws of physics. So I went over that on the show in a past podcast. You could check that out on the podcast section. And of course I talk about the occult overtones and the occult symbolic aspects of this ritual, because it indeed was a trauma-based mind control ritual, and it was a highly symbolic ritual regarding the destruction of consciousness, a huge injection of fear and trauma into the mass consciousness of the people of Earth. And of course, there are other even darker occult elements to this. If you really ask me my take on what this ritual was about, again, in the work that I did covering the ritualistic aspects of this, I consider this what is known as a grand rite of manifestation. This is a high-level occult dark working, a dark occult magical working that is what I refer to as chaos sorcery. And it is what is referred to in dark occultism as a manifestation rite. It's something that is there to cause such extreme havoc and chaos in other people's lives that essentially, since you are going to steer that chaos and you're going to steer that trauma, you're going to end up manifesting what you want to manifest as a result of your management of the chaos. Hence, I call it chaos sorcery. It's not what some people have termed chaos magic, different takes on what that is. But I call it chaos sorcery because to delineate between the usage of energy in a positive connotation, which you might term magic, or the usage of influence in a positive connotation, I define magic as the art of influencing the will, influencing change to occur in accordance with the will, but the will of creation being that will. You're not influencing things according to your own selfish desires or your lower will. You're trying to create change in accordance with what the universe is trying to create, which is the advancement of consciousness, the advancement of freedom, the advancement of morality. And I call this chaos sorcery, because sorcery is the manipulation of consciousness, or manipulating things to create change in accordance with the lower will, to get what you want out of it. Hence, they call this a grand rite of manifestation. And this is something that obviously requires many, many people coming together to work together on. Of course, it required a conspiracy. Conspiracy simply means those who have come together in like spirit. That's all it means. We get the word respire, meaning to breathe, from the Latin spiro spirare, okay, which means to breathe in Latin. Okay, it's where the word spirit is derived. Spiritus. Spiritus in Latin comes from that verb, spiro, spirare, meaning to breathe. To have the spirit within you is to have the breath of life within you. Okay, and when we put this together with the Latin prefix conspirare means to breathe together. So conspiracy means those who are acting in like spirit. That's all it means. People make this grand idea of what a conspiracy is. All it means is a few people of similar mindset came together to accomplish something together. That's all it ever has meant. So, of course, this was a conspiracy because, people in the military-industrial complex, people in the high-level banking and finance world, people in, black ops aspects of government, people in intelligence agencies, of course, they all had to come together to make this PSYOP work and to fool enough people for a short enough amount of time, or a long enough amount of time, to get their agenda across, in other countries and in this country, which is draconian takeover of people's rights, and constantly whittling away at people's rights day by day, month by month, year by year. So but I definitely think that directed energy weapons might have played a role. I think this may have been, what better time to bring out some type of a new technology and show it to the rest of the world, and not only that, you're doing it on your own people. It puts this fear, it strikes fear into your so-called opponents, the administrators of the farms next door, called nation states. Let's strike some fear into them and say, look what we're willing to do to our own people to justify going in and taking resources from another country and, putting more draconian measures, laws into effect, here at home. We're willing to do this to our own people. What do you think we'll do to you? That's why I think, ultimately what this was all about. So what better way to do that than to bring out a new piece of weaponry that you're showing on the grand scale to the leaders of the other countries that you don't want to get in your way. Okay, you're saying, hey, here's what we have at our disposal. We're willing to use this on our own people. Imagine what we'll do to you. So that's kind of my take on it. But I'll let you ask another one on the other side of the break. Stay with us, and we'll be right back after this quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to What on Earth is Happening. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening here on the Republic Broadcasting Radio Network. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. We were talking with Philip in North Carolina, who was asking a couple of questions about the possibility of directed energy weapons being used on 9/11/2001. Philip, are you still on the line with us?
Yes, sir. I'm still here. I wanted to ask you if you yourself had a chance to read Dr. Judy Wood's book, Where Did the Towers Go?
I have not read the book. I have watched her presentations. I think I saw the new Hiroshima and another presentation she gave at a conference, but I have not actually read the book Where Did the Towers Go presently.
The reason that I asked that is because in order for someone to ask themselves the question, what on earth is happening, I think something has to happen to that person. I'm here talking to you now. I am absorbing your information, as are others, just like everybody in that conference in Asheville had a reason for asking themselves what on earth is happening. And for me, the most important thing that's happened in my lifetime, possibly ever, would be 9/11.
Right.
So when I try to direct people to the objective truth about life, I can't think of a better way of showing them the truth than by giving them that book.
Sure. I think that's a great plan of attack personally, because 9/11 was one of the most transformative events in our times, and like the saying goes, I believe Michael Tessarion coined this one. He said, "Did 9/11 wake you up? Did it shake you up, or did it wake you up?" That's the two effects that it had. Did it put you into deeper fear, or did it show you what was really going on in the world? And for you, it sounds like it woke you up and it showed you what was really going on in the world, and just how dire of a situation this is when, things like this could be going on right under our noses, and still people are caught unawares and still don't really understand the ins and outs of it. And I think that's why we have to keep pressing forward with this as a main issue. This is one of the staple core issues of our time as far as I'm concerned as well. I think you're right on point with that, and I don't think we should let this go. It's not something that's in the past. It's something that is, things are actively, constantly being conducted because of allegedly what happened on 9/11. And if that's all based on a lie, why do we have all these other things that are going on that are, so draconian and so, stamping on all of our other freedoms as a result? So I definitely think that that's something that the pressure should be kept up on, and I think you're right on point with that.
Absolutely. When I actually keep one picture from her book in my telephone when I start to talk with someone. I show them the picture of WTC 7, and you can clearly see looking north with WTC 1 and 2 missing. WTC 7 is still there. It didn't go away until 5:20 in that afternoon, and yet we have 210-story buildings that have disappeared before that time. We objectively know that because we can see it through that picture and through a number of pictures. So just looking at that and seeing it shows the person that what they thought was impossible is in fact possible because it happened.
And then you combine that with two other things. You show them the actual footage of Building 7 coming down straight into its own footprint with very minimal damage to the building. People say, oh, there were fires. Yeah, not fires that could take a whole 47-story steel and concrete reinforced office building to the ground into its own footprint like we witnessed. And then show them the BBC footage of James Stanley standing up in front of the New York skyline live in a live picture being broadcast to BBC, telling people that the building had already collapsed when in fact it's standing in the skyline behind her, because they got their scripts a little bit out of time, sequential order, and she announced that at about 5 p.m. when the building was still standing there and didn't collapse for another 20 minutes.
Well, I think an even more impressive fact is that there are still 1,116 people that they have not found a toenail of.
Sure.
You got over 1,100 people that disappeared. You had 7 buildings that, for the most part, turned to dust. You have 1,400 cars that were toasted.
So what vaporizes material like that? What vaporizes matter like that? It's something that caused disintegration. The integration of that matter was caused to come apart. Therefore, it disintegrated, literally. You had a weapon, some type of a wave weapon or scalar weapon of some kind that obviously can take apart matter, literally. And I mean, people just have to ask themselves the question, what's so even far-fetched about this? How many decades or even centuries ahead of average technology that is released to the general public is military-industrial complex research and technology? I mean,
absolutely.
All the money that they have at their disposal, all the scientists and researchers they have at their disposal. Of course, it's at least 100 years ahead, maybe more.
Oh, absolutely. If you just find me a pilot that will tell you that a 767 can fly 600 miles an hour at sea level, you can't find one because it's an impossibility.
Sure. It would reach resonance frequency. That plane would shake apart. It would come apart at the seams, literally.
Absolutely, and aluminum certainly cannot pierce through 2 feet of steel, and you have a Category 3 hurricane for 4 days, was headed right toward New York, and for the 24 hours surrounding 9/11, it basically stayed offshore. It got a little bit bigger, and then headed the opposite direction.
Yep. It all smacks of some kind of scalar, non-Hertzian wave technology in effect there during that time frame. No question about it. I think the only way we're ever really going to know the truth, or at least get closer to it, is to constantly put pressure. And I mean, not just on, public, I'm not talking about public quote unquote officials. I'm talking about just put this information up into the face of everybody that we know. We have to, bring this to the attention of our friends, coworkers, family members, neighbors, you name it. I mean, you just have to talk about this stuff with people to bring it into the general consciousness. Until more people want answers, answers aren't going to come. More people have to demand answers. They have to come forward and talk about this without fear, unapologetically saying, hey, this is a legitimate question. There's nothing wacky or strange in asking these questions. This is talking about basic laws of physics and mechanics that cannot suspend themselves like this. And that's what the official story asks you to believe. The official story is the conspiracy theory and the religion, folks. I mean, that's asking people to believe that laws of physics can suddenly suspend themselves. That's absolutely requires much more faith and belief than believing that there may have been some unknown technology at work that was used by the military-industrial complex to stage this grand event so that they could go in and war on other countries and take whatever resources they want from them. I mean, that to me makes a whole infinitely lot more sense than 19 so-called radical Islamicists with box cutters made NORAD stand down and basically flew 2 planes into buildings and collapsed 3 in the process into their own footprint. Philip, great points. Thanks so much for the call.
Have you had an opportunity to read Dr. Judy Wood's book, Where Did the Towers Go? And did you maybe explain, and there was even a part in that interview where you mentioned that part of the ritual came from a higher place. Wanted to know if you could maybe elaborate your point of view on that.
Yeah, I talked about, the ritualistic aspects of 9/11. I also talked about the impossibility of it being a... Okay, let's hear from Philip in North Carolina. Philip, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Passio. Thank you for taking my call. How are you?
Sure, I'm doing well tonight.
I am giving you a call for the first time. This is my first time calling in. I am relatively new to your work. I believe the beginning of March was about the first time I had clicked on a What on Earth is Happening YouTube video, and I even attended the seminar in Asheville a couple of weeks ago.
Great.
I've been kind of shy and to your information because I have yet to hear up until about a day ago when I listened to an interview that you did on September the 12th, 2012 on Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye in regards to September the 11th and directed energy weapons.
Right.
You made a couple of references in that video that I really haven't heard in the material that I've had the time to be able to absorb. So my question is,
a mechanical collapse due to fires and bending or melting steel, etc. As the official story goes, the pancake collapse theory. I talked about that pretty extensively and ran through the physics equations that are required to understand to even prove just in essential Newtonian dynamics, which any junior